Hello and welcome to the metacognition.org.uk CPD video on metacognitive strategies implementing process. So this is video 2 out of 8 on metacognition, and this one is specifically looking at strategies that we can use to embed the process of metacognition within our teaching practice. So before we go any further, if you haven't seen the introduction to Metacognitive Theory CPD, you need to go and watch that first. So that's a really important video, and without having seen that CPD, you're going to struggle a lot more to understand the strategies and implement them correctly that are mentioned during this CPD. So the aims of this CPD session, firstly to recall the two different metacognitive processes so that we're familiar with them and we're confident with them. Secondly is to understand why these two processes are really important and why we need to embed it within our teaching. And then lastly is to develop your range of strategies that you can use to embed the metacognitive processes into your teaching. So the metacognitive theories as cycles. So remember when we went over the theory, we said that knowledge of cognition and regulation of cognition can be broken down into two different sections. So knowledge of cognition becomes knowledge of task, knowledge of self, knowledge of strategies, and that's process number 1. And regulation of cognition becomes plan, monitor, and evaluate, and that becomes process number 2. And it's these two processes in bold that we need to know. And what we can do is we can turn both of these into cycles, and then we can use them to inform all of our teaching. So here we are, produce them as cycles, and both of them must become fundamental to the way we teach metacognitively. These two must be embedded within every lesson, within the resources, within the modeling, within the questioning that we're using. They must become fundamental parts of our practice that students understand, students are aware of, and students utilize all of the time. The other thing to be aware of is these are cycles, and so they just continue turning and turning. Each end point of the cycle just informs the next part of the cycle. So for example, evaluation just then goes on to inform future planning. Learning new strategies or practicing strategies informs an individual's knowledge of self, or completing new tasks will give students a greater knowledge of task. So we need to understand that these cycles just keep on turning and keep on being more and more informed, and we also need to make that explicit to students. So why do we even need to bother doing this? So the metacognitive cycles are what we want students to be doing. We want students to plan, monitor, and evaluate. We want students to consider their knowledge of self, to consider their knowledge of strategies, and to consider their knowledge of the task. That's what we want students to be doing. So if we want students to be doing them, we need to make them explicit in our teaching, in students' work, and our expectations. If we're not including them, and if we're not expecting students to use them, they're not going to become obvious in students' work. If we make them explicit in our teaching, if we make them requirements of students' work, they will gradually become automatic in students' thinking and their independent work. So in practice, when students are working independently, e.g. revising or doing homework or even completing an exam, they will use the processes without us even being there. That's our ultimate goal. We want students to use these two processes when we're not even there. So, going to go through strategies now, and for this one there's slightly fewer strategies. I've got 5 in total to present to you during this CPD. No one size fits all. Some of these strategies might work for one class but not another. Some of them might work for primary, not secondary, or vice versa, or you might just need to adapt them a little bit just to suit your practice. You are your subject expert, I'm not. You know your classes, I don't. So take these strategies and fit them to suit your class. It's not an exclusive list. There probably are more ways to do this, and if I put my head down, I could probably find some more strategies, but these are the main 5. The other thing to be aware of is they don't fit neatly into categories. So some strategies that support embedding process also incorporate discussion or questioning or planning. So it's kind of a bit of a muddle. It's not as if these 5 strategies only work for process and nothing else. There are blurred lines. So strategy 1 is modeling. We model in every single lesson. We show students how to do something. We teach them how to do a new skill. We teach them how to answer a question, write an exam answer, kick a ball, cook something. We model how to do that. So use the cycles within your modeling. Be explicit about it when you're explaining. So I've given an example here. If we're looking at writing something, your modeling would say, I know that I need to plan my answer, keyword there being plan, so that I include all key events in the correct order. Whilst I am writing, I monitor being the next key part of the process to make sure that I'm including them all. When I am complete, I evaluate. So I can see here in this example, I'm using the plan, monitor, evaluate. This terminology isn't alien to students, it's being used and they understand why it's being used. You can also use it for the knowledge process cycle. So I know that this topic is one where I have fewer strategies to answer the question. I know that strategy A can be used for more types of questions, and I am more confident using it, so I use it for this task. So there, knowledge of self is, I don't know many strategies, but I do know strategy A. I know strategy A can be used for more types, and I'm confident using it, so I'm going to have to try to use it for this task. So make these cycles explicit and make those words clear and used commonly in your modelling. If we want students to be familiar with the words, we have to use them. They can't be alien, they can't be thrown in once a week. It needs to be consistently and repeatedly used within your modelling. And then once students become familiar with the terms, they will understand how you as an expert are working through them. So when students know they need to plan, monitor, and evaluate, and they can see that you're modeling how to plan, monitor, and evaluate, they'll start to pick up these strategies. It's about turning the invisibleness of plan, monitor, evaluate to something visible that students can see, learn from, and implement themselves. Strategy 2 is lesson segmentation, and it works very similar to that first strategy. We've got 2 cycles. Break your lesson down into those cycles. It works a little bit better for the planning, monitoring, and evaluation cycle. So turn your lesson into 3 stages. Stage 1 is planning, stage 2 is monitoring, and stage 3 is evaluation. That's how we go through exam questions, that's how we solve problems, so we can go through lessons like that as well. So for example, if you are producing a letter, if you're writing a letter, start off with you modeling how to plan it. So I'm going to write the address here. This is how I'm going to address the reader. This is the content which I want to put in, and you bullet point it down. Then set students the task of planning their own letter. And then they will understand, right, to begin, I plan. Then we can go back to you as the teacher and you can model how to monitor. So you start drafting up the letter and you show how you're ticking things off or you're utilizing key information from your plan to write up your letter correctly. You then give students 20 minutes to write the letter and they will monitor in the same fashion that you did how you modeled it. Students can then replicate that in their own work. Then you can go on and you can show them how you evaluated. Did your plan work? Did you include all of the key points? What should you do next time? And then students can go back and evaluate their work. Did their letter come out as they wanted it? Did their plan work? Did they miss out any information? Did they put too much information on their plan? It's an opportunity to evaluate. So by breaking our lesson into the plan, monitor, and evaluate stages, students are going to be clear that they then need to plan, monitor, and evaluate when they're going through tasks. If we're explicit about it, students will pick it up. Right, strategy 3, nice simple one this time. Use the cycles and put them on worksheets as a constant reminder to students that they need to be using those cycles. So on the top right hand corner, put the plan, monitor, and evaluate cycle, because then students will recall that they need to plan, monitor, and evaluate. It's important here, though, that this isn't a one-off. You don't just remember to do it once a fortnight, because otherwise students will ignore it. It needs to be something consistent that is on their worksheets, on their PowerPoint, and it also needs to be something that is referred to and is in their expectations. So if it's just on the sheet every single time, that's a start. But if it's not being referred to, not being explicitly mentioned, and not being inbuilt into expectations, it will just become the elephant in the room. It'll just be ignored. It'll be on there, but doing nothing. So it needs to be incorporated into tasks. So you'll say, you've got the cycle in the top right-hand corner. Make sure you go through the plan, monitor, evaluate stages. So this is a nice, easy way just to copy and paste something, and then just to mention every single start of your task. And obviously it's a scaffold, so in time you will be able to remove it once you identify that students are planning, monitoring, evaluating for themselves without even using the cycle. Right, strategy 4 is to turn the processes into planning documents. So example here on the right hand side, this is a knowledge of task, knowledge of self, knowledge of strategies planning template. They write the task up here, or you can have that already typed up, and then students fill in this table. This could be their planning document, this could be an evaluation document, this could be a pre-completion document. You can use it for whatever you want, students can use it for whatever they want, but it gives you a chance to formalize the process in your lessons. You can formally introduce the knowledge of task, knowledge of self, knowledge of strategies process, and get students to really think hard about each section. Again, the more that students do this, the more automatic it will become, and the more likely students are going to do this when they're outside your lessons as well. Strategy 5 is in terms of your questioning. So there's going to be more questioning strategies in the next video, because the next CPD video is on questioning. So use these cycles to inform your questioning. Ask questions using those keywords. How would you plan? How would you monitor? How would you evaluate? Considering your knowledge of this task, what would you do? These sorts of questions, and go through each of these stages as you would a task or problem. So ask your planning questions, then ask your monitoring questions, then ask your evaluation questions. So some examples here for you to look at and reflect, and notice that I'm trying to get those keywords in as often as possible so that students become familiar with them and they become more automatic to students learning. The other thing is, I really strongly recommend here pre-selecting questions. It's very hard just to walk into a lesson blind and just pull out these questions. Just consider 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that you want to be asking that link in with the correct process for that lesson, because not all of these questions are going to be appropriate for all tasks or for all lessons or all subjects. So decide on several questions that are appropriate, plan these in, and then you know that you're asking high quality metacognitive questions during that teaching episode. That's it for this video. Nice, short and sweet. So thank you for watching. I hope there you've got 5 different strategies that you can implement into your teaching. As mentioned before, all of our CPD videos and resources are available on our website, metacognition.org.uk, under the teacher drop-down. So if you click on teacher, you can then click on each of the different stages. There's more CPD and resources added all the time, so keep looking out for new stuff that's being added in. And it's all free. I've mentioned this before, everything will be free, and I want to keep it free. However, if you do have any pounds or pennies that you can drop our way on our PayPal link that's on our website, please do. That will help cover the cost of the website, which I would really appreciate. Please do share it widely. The more people who can watch the CPD, the more people who can benefit, and the more students who will benefit in turn. Mention it to other teachers, pass it on to T&L leads, pass it on to SLT so that they can distribute around staff. You can also follow us at Metacognition U on Twitter to check out updates, to see what we're up to, and to see what resources and CPD has been uploaded. And then lastly, told you a little minute ago, the next video is modelling, not questioning, sorry. So the next CPD video is metacognitive strategies, modelling. So go and check out that video, and that will give you some strategies how to improve your modelling of metacognition. Thank you for watching.